Hey guys, my name is Mr. Burke. What I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to be talking about Miss Lois Lowry. She is a author who was actually born in Hawaii in 1937 on March 20th. Her given name is Lois Ann Hammersberg, but what I'm really getting into is the book, The Giver. What I'm going to be doing is I will be reading this book out loud to you so that you guys can follow along if you choose, or you can just listen to it. Miss Lowry, if you or any of your people hear this, please know that I am not doing this for the money. I am doing this for my classroom. I'm doing this as an English teacher, so that way the kids during COVID and whatnot will be able to follow along, or kids that are doing, extended learning can listen in. Please know I will not accept any monies if any is made from this venture. I'm doing this all just for the kids. So if I do make any money, I will send it all right back to you. So that is my little spiel. Now, I would like to start reading chapter one. We'll do chapter one now, and then when I get to chapter two, we'll pause and I will do another video for chapter two. The Giver by Lois Lowry. Chapter one. It was almost December, and Jonas was beginning to be frightened. No, wrong word, Jonas thought. Frightened meant that sickening feeling of something terrible about to happen. Frightened was the way he had felt a year ago when an unidentified aircraft had overflown the community twice. He had seen it both times. Squinting toward the sky, he had seen a sleek jet, almost a blur, at high speed go past, and a second later, then a blast of sound that followed. Then one more time. A moment later, from the opposite direction of the same plane. At first, he was fascinated. He had never seen an aircraft so close. It was against the rules for pilots to fly over the community, and occasionally when supplies were delivered by cargo planes to the landing field across the river, but the children rode their bikes to the riverbank and they watched, intrigued. The unloading and then the takeoff redirected to the west, always away from the community. But the aircraft a year ago had been different. It was not the squat, fat-bellied cargo plane, the needle-nosed single-pilot jet. Jonas, looking around anxiously, he had seen others, adults as well as children, stop what they were doing and wait, confused for an explanation of the frightening event. Then all the citizens had been ordered to go into the nearest building and stay there. Immediately, the rasping voice through the speakers had said, "Leave your bicycles where they are." Instantly, obediently, Jonas had dropped his bike on its side on the path behind his family's dwelling. He had run indoors and stayed there alone. His parents were both at work, and his little sister, Lily, was at childcare center, where she spent her after school hours. Looking through the front window, he had seen no people. None of the busy afternoon street crew cleaners, landscape workers, food delivery people who usually populated the community at the time of day. He saw only the abandoned bikes here and there on its sides. An upturned wheel on one side was revolving slowly. He had been frightened then. The sense of his community is silent, waiting. It made his stomach churn. He trembled. But it had been nothing. Within a few minutes, the speakers had crackled again, and the voice, reassuring, now less urgent, had explained that a pilot in training had misread his navigational instructions and made a wrong turn. Desperately, the pilot had been trying to make his way back before his error was noticed. Needless to say, he will be released, the voice had said, followed by silence. There was an ironic tone to that final message, as if the speaker found it amusing, and Jonas had smiled a little. But he knew the grim statement it had been. For a contributing citizen to be released from the community was a final decision, a terrible punishment, an overwhelming statement of failure. Even the children were scolded as if they used the term lightly at play, jeering at a teammate who missed a catch or stumbled on a race. Jonas had done it once. He shouted at his best friend, "That's it, Asher! You're released!" When Asher clumsily, error, had lost the match for his team, he had been taken aside for a brief, very serious talk by the coach. He'd hung his head with guilt and embarrassment and apologized to Asher after the game. Now, thinking about that feeling of fear as he pedaled along the river path, you remember that moment of palpable sinking terror when the aircraft had shrieked above. It was not that he was feeling now with December approaching. He searched for the right words to describe his own feeling. Jonas was careful about language. Not like his friend Asher, who always talked too fast, mixed things up, scrambling words and phrases until they were barely recognizable and often very funny. Jonas grinned, remembering the morning that Asher had dashed into the classroom late, as usual, arriving breathlessly in the middle of a chanting of the morning anthem. When the class took their seats in conclusion of the patriotic hymn, Asher remained standing to make his public apology as required. I am apologizing for inconveniencing my learning community. Asher ran through the standard apology phrase rapidly, still catching his breath. The instructor in class waited patiently for his explanation. The students had all been grinning because they had listened to Asher's explanations so many times before. I left home at the correct time, but when I was riding along in their hatchery, the crew was separating some salmon. I guess I got distraught watching them. I apologize to my classmates, Asher concluded. He smoothed his rumpled tunic and he sat down. We accept your apology, Asher, the class recited a standard response in unison. Many of the students were, biting their lips from laughing. I accept your apology, Asher, the instructor said. He was smiling. And I thank you, because once again, you have provided an opportunity for a lesson in language. Distraught is too strong an adjective to describe salmon viewing. He turned and wrote distraught on the instructional board. Beside it, he wrote distracted. Jonas, nearing his home now, smiled at the recollection, thinking still as he wheeled his new bike on the narrow port beside the door. He realized the frightened was the wrong word to describe his feelings. Now that December was almost here, it was too strong an adjective. He had waited a long time for the special December. Now that it was almost upon him, he wasn't frightened. He was eager, he decided. He was eager for it to come. And he was excited, certainly. All the 11s were excited about the event that would be coming so soon. And there was a little shudder of nervousness when he thought about it, about what might happen. Apprehensive, Jonas decided. That's what I am. Who wants to be the first tonight for feelings? Jonas's father asked at the conclusion of their evening meal. It was one of the rituals. The evening telling of feelings. Sometimes Jonas and his little sister, Lily, argued over turns, over who would go first. The parents, of course, were a part of the ritual. They, too, told their feelings each evening. But like all parents, all adults, they didn't fight and wheedle for their turn. Nor did Jonas tonight. His feelings were too complicated this evening, and he wanted to share them. He just wasn't eager to begin the process of sifting through his own complicated emotions, even with the help that he knew his parents could give. You go, Lily, he said, seeing his sister, who was much younger, only 7, wiggling with impatience in her chair. I felt very angry this afternoon, Lily announced. My childcare group was at the play area, and we were visiting some 7s, and they didn't obey the rules at all. One of them, a male, I don't know his name, kept going right out in front of the line for the slide, even though the rest of us were all waiting. I felt so angry at him, I made my hand into a fist like this. And she held up a little clenched fist, and the rest of the family smiled at her small, defiant gesture. Why do you think all the visitors didn't obey the rules? Mother asked. Lily considered and shook her head. I don't know. They acted like animals, Jonas suggested, and he laughed. That's right, Lily said, laughing too, like animals. Neither child knew what the word meant exactly, but it was often used to describe someone uneducated or clumsy, someone who just didn't fit in. Where were the visitors from? Mother asked. Lily frowned, trying to remember. Our leader told us when he made the welcome speech, but I can't remember. I guess I wasn't paying attention. It was from another community, And they had to leave very early, and they had their midday meal on the bus. Mother nodded. Do you think it's possible that their rules may be different? And so they simply didn't know what your play area rules were? Lily shrugged and nodded. I suppose. You visited other communities, haven't you? Jonas asked. My group often has. Lily nodded again. When we were sixes, we went and shared a whole school day with a group of sixes in their community. How did you feel when you were there? Lily frowned. I felt strange because their methods were different. They were learning usages, and my group hadn't learned yet, and so we felt stupid. Father was listening with interest. I'm thinking, Lily, he said, about the boy who didn't obey the rules today. Do you think it's possible that he felt strange and stupid, being in a new place with rules that he didn't know about? Lily pondered that. Yes, she said finally. I feel a little sorry for him, Jonas said. Even though I don't know him, I feel sorry for anyone who is in a place where he feels strange and stupid. How do you feel now, Lily? Father asked. Still angry? I guess not, Lily decided. I guess I feel a little sorry for him and sorry I made a fist. She grinned. Jonas smiled back at his sister, and Lily's feelings were always straightforward and fairly simple, easy to resolve, and he guessed his own had been too when he was 7. He listened politely, though not too attentively, while his father took his turn, describing a feeling of worry that he had on that day at work, a concern about one of the newborn children who wasn't doing well. Jonas's father had the title of nurturer. He and the other nurturers were responsible for all the physical and emotional needs of every newborn child during its earliest life. It was a very important job, and Jonas knew it wasn't one that interested him very much. What gender is it? Lily asked. Male, father said. His sweet little male body with lovely disposition, but he isn't growing as fast as he should, and he doesn't sleep soundly. We have him in the extra care section for supplementary nurturing, but the committee's beginning to talk about releasing him. Oh no, Mother murmured sympathetically. I know how sad that must make you feel. Jonas and Lily both nodded sympathetically as well. Release of a new children was always sad because they hadn't had the chance to enjoy life within the community yet, and they hadn't done anything wrong. There were only 2 occasions of release, which were not punishment. Release of the elderly, which was a time of celebration for life well and fully lived, and release of a new child, which always brought a sense of what could we have done. This was especially troubling for nurturers, like father, who felt they failed somehow. But it happened very rarely. Well, father said, I'm gonna go keep trying. I may ask the committee for permission to bring him here at night, if you don't mind. You know what the night crew and the nurturers are like. I think this little guy needs something extra. Of course, mother said, and Jonas and Lily nodded. They had heard their father complain about the night crew before. It was a lesser job. Night crew nurturer assigned to those who had lacked the interest or skills or insight for more vital jobs of daytime hours. Most of the people in the night crew had not even given spouses because they lacked somehow the essential capacity to connect to others, which was required for the creation of a family unit. Maybe we could keep him, Lily suggested sweetly, trying to look all innocent. The look was fake, Jonas knew. They all knew. Lily, mother reminded her, smiling, you know the rules. 2 children, 1 male and 1 female to each family unit. It's written very clearly in the rules. Lily giggled. Well, she said, I thought maybe just this once. Next, Mother, who held a prominent position at the Department of Justice, talked about her feelings. Today, a repeat offender had been brought before her, someone who had broken the rules before, someone she had hoped had been adequately and fairly punished. Anu had been restored to his place, to his job, his home, and his family unit. To see him brought before her a second time caused her overwhelming feelings of frustration and anger, even guilt that she hadn't made a difference in his life. I feel frightened for him too, she confessed. There's no third chance. The rules say that if there's a third transgression, he simply has to be released. Jonas shivered. He knew it happened. There was even a boy in his group of 11 whose father had been released for years before. No one ever mentioned it. It was disgrace was unspeakable. It was hard to imagine. Lily stood up and went to her mother. She stroked her mother's arm. From his place at the table, father reached over and took her hand, and Jonas took the other. One by one, they comforted her. Soon she smiled, thanked them, and murmured that she felt soothed. The ritual continued. Jonas, father asked, you're last tonight. Jonas sighed. This evening he almost would have preferred to keep his feelings hidden, but it was, of course, against the rules. I'm feeling apprehensive, he confessed, glad the appropriate descriptive word had finally come to him. Why is that, son? His father had looked concerned. I know there's really nothing to worry about, Jonas explained it, and that every adult has been through it. I know you have, father, and you too, mother, but the ceremony that I'm apprehensive about, it's almost December. Lily looked up, her eyes wide open. The ceremony of 12, she whispered in an awed voice. Even the smallest children, Lily's age and younger, knew that lay in the future for each of them. I'm glad you told us your feelings, father said. Lily, mother said, beckoning the little girl, go on now and get your night clothes. Father and I are going to stay here and talk to Jonas for a while. Lily sighed, but obediently she got up and went from her chair. Privately? She asked. Mother nodded. Yes, she said. This talk will be a private one with Jonas. All right, guys. What I'm going to do now is, if you are following along with me, and I have made these workbooks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the questions for chapter 1. Or if you have just watched this YouTube video and you just want to see if you can answer these questions in your head, please do so. Chapter 1, question 1. Describe Jonas's community. What do you think his community looked like? What is it that you think it felt like? Take just 10 seconds, 15 seconds, and describe just real quick what you feel his community looked like. What did it feel like? Pause the video if you need to. Number 2, describe Jonas's family. What did his parents do? Number 3, who is Asher? Number 4, what do they discuss in their ritual of feeling sharing? And last but not least, number 5, what is this ceremony of 12? I look forward to seeing you each in our next video. Thank you and have a great day.